Hello, 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 hello. Welcome to another episode of Diary of the Professional. This is Ashley,
Lou.
and we have our lovely guest this evening or this afternoon or whatever time it is for y'all, honestly. And watching this is Nehanda here too. She's a mental health counselor at Therapy Brooklyn. So before we even get started, let's start with our gratitudes and I'll start.
Thank you.
I'm gonna start. I almost threw it to you, Marlou, but I'm a start real
Thank
quick.
you.
I am grateful, honestly, for some rest. I say that because I feel we just get caught up in that work and move and go and ray and tay and here and there and everywhere. And then your body reminds you real quick that you need to sit down. And my body reminded me a few days ago, like I was at work and my body just malfunctioned. I kid you not. Like my body was just like, you're tired.
Wow.
My body midday was no lie, was just like, you're tired. I was like nauseous. I was shivering. My body was malfunctioning for no reason. No reason.
There's a reason.
Exhaustion.
Exactly. I just got up and I said, no, I'm not doing this. And they looked at me, like my coworkers looked at me, and I was like, I gotta go home. I slept for about 16 hours.
Wow.
Straight. And I was like, oh, that's what my body was trying to tell me.
Reclaim your time, girl. Reclaim it.
I was like, oh, my body was trying to tell me to sit my ass down. Okay. All right. Yeah, so I'm grateful for rest. Yes.
I feel that.
Go ahead, Marley.
I'll go next, if that's okay.
Ooh, okay.
I am grateful for human connection. I say that because for most of the pandemic, I've been doing telehealth, which, it's great, it's convenient, but I've missed like being around people. And recently I started at a drug treatment center, in addition to still being at Therapy Brooklyn, but I've been able to make in-person connections with a lot of really cool people. I love hearing people's stories of recovery, of, beating the odds. And so it's been a great reminder that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So I'm very grateful. I was going to say very gratitude. I'm very grateful for in-person connections. I'm very grateful for seeing people make changes, for transformation, and just reminders that there is hope. And so, yeah, that's what I'm grateful for.
I love that. And I'm happy about the in-person as well, just because even I've had my therapist from easily, I want to say 6 years. I'll say Grand Park of 6 years. And it was in person. But during the pandemic, when we switched to virtual, honestly, if I did not know this woman, if I did not have and foster that relationship with her, it would have been 10 times harder. So I was so grateful that I at least knew her beforehand. And now that we're back in person, it feels so much like I'm back at home again. So I'm happy you're able to like go back and transition into in person again, because it makes so much of a difference.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm ready. I am grateful for the people in my mommy community because, these kids sometimes, especially when they're on break, whether they're sick or whatever, they can put you through it. And sometimes, whether it's like even Ashley, if there's something going on, it's one thing to be a nurse, but then it's like when it comes to your kids, you just want to be like, okay, let me just ask you a question and bounce something off of you. And I am just thankful for y'all for making me feel like, one, I'm not by myself. I'm not crazy. And to just bring it all back. So I am thankful for y'all.
Yeah. Oh. And I always say too as well, when you have to put on a certain cap, that's it. When you are on mommy role, you are on mommy role. You cannot be the nurse. You cannot be the this. You're in mommy mode. That's it. That's it. You know. So yeah, it's always important to have support and community. But speaking of these things of support and everything, I wanted to get into this topic of having parents who have migrated to this country and the challenges we may face as the first generation, you know, children who like deal with these challenges living here, having the education. So I really wanted to kind of discuss that too as well, and how to overcome these kind of challenges as well. So I kind of wanted to start off to where we all from, that we all kind of get a little bit of everything that people could understand us too. So let's go.
Well, if y'all didn't know, my family is from Haiti.
Okay. My family's from Jamaica.
My family is from St. Vincent. My dad is born in Aruba, moved to St. Vincent. My mom, born and raised in St. Vincent, and I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York.
Yes, born and bred New Yorkers over here, y'all.
Oh, New York is here. Okay. So I just wanted to first kind of speak about, has anyone ever experienced any type of unconscious guilt from childhood into adulthood, needing to even be a certain profession that would be deemed great by their parents, or the academic achievement that was needed? I just wanted to kind of start there.
Oof. For me, I thought I would be a doctor, honestly. I have a fair amount of them in my family, and that's just for Haitians, I'm sure a whole bunch of different Caribbeans. It's doctor, lawyer, engineer, and I guess if you're a female, you can be a nurse, and that's you good. Mm-hmm. They like stability. You know, it's a things that's always needed, well-paying professions, all of that. And I was actually going that track until my father had got sick, and I was like, the nurses is who I saw taking care, and I was like, that's what I want to do. It just so happened I fit the criteria, but that was never my intention. When actually being like, oh, that's it. That's what I want to do. So yeah, I think if it wasn't in that realm, it would have been an uphill battle for sure. For sure.
Mm-hmm. And I felt for me too, it was important to be the best at anything I do. It was like, if I came home with a 90%, it was like, where's that extra 10%? What happened to that 10%? Where did it go? So it's like, I didn't come to this country for another 10% to be just out in the air, you know? That's how it was always kind of relayed to me in a way. Like, right. We didn't come to this country for this, you know? So,
we're not playing games.
No, what are we doing here? And I think by the time I was 16 years old, it was what are you planning to do? You need to start really thinking about this. What are you really trying to do? Here are some options. You need to start thinking this over in the next year or two.
Jesus. Honestly. And I'm thinking about it.
And I'm like, wow. Ooh. I need to get this right, because if I don't get this right, my parents' legacy. And that's what I had in the back of my mind a lot of times too. So I felt there was so much unconscious guilt if I ever like decided to go and be the dancer I wanted to be in a way, or be the violinist I really wanted to be at times. And I felt like it was way more important to make sure I had stability too, which of course it is important to have stability, but at that moment in time, what was ingrained to me, I was like, oh no, I should not go against the grain here, you know? So I don't know. And I also wanted to just even ask, like, did anyone have any difficulty like merging any of their cultural identity and now being here too, growing up here as well?
Now, you want to take this one?
Yeah. I would say not really. But there is a very stark difference in who I am at home with my parents and who I am outside. So, I code switch a lot. There's a lot of things I wouldn't, say in therapy with someone who maybe is not from a similar background that I would say at home. So, I speak to my parents differently. Then there's the work me. Then there's the me that you know as a friend. So I feel like I've had different identities always. But one thing that is always present in each of them, I would say integrity has always had to be there, and it is there because that's part of how I was raised, is to like try to be the same person you are character wise in every setting. But I would say that I've had to code switch a lot. And just to go back to what you said about careers, me being a therapist was not supported by my family. They were just like, why? Like, what is that? Do you think you want to help people all the time? Like, oh, you know, some people have the opportunity to do better jobs and you have an opportunity to have a better job. And I'm like, what's wrong with this job? So when I went to grad school, it was very like, why don't you just become a nurse? Or why don't you just become a teacher? Why do you want to do therapy? And so some of them are still on the fence about my career choice. But I have like sort of had to fight to show like mental health is a very real thing. I know that the way that my parents grew up, there was no mental health. It's like, all right, is your arm broken? No. Are you in the hospital? No. You have nothing to complain about. You have food, you have clothes. There's no reason to talk about mental health. What is mental health? So I think I've definitely had to go against the grain in that way. Picking a profession that was not typical to them as like something that is even needed in the world. But yeah, I think in a way now they can appreciate what I do. But at first it was very tough to try to get that validation from them.
Mm-hmm. And how is it now that they see you in the workforce and everything?
Now I would say they're pretty proud to tell people like, oh, my daughter's a therapist. But when I first went to grad school, it was not that. It was like, yo, pick something else. Like, what are you
There's
doing?
still time.
And so
Switch it around.
exactly. And then there are times like before I started working in person again that they'll think, oh, she's just at home on the phone all day. It's like, I'm not on the phone all day. I'm actually doing my job. My job is to talk to people. But they'd be like, you've been home all day. You didn't even cook. You didn't even blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, because I'm working. This is a job. So I think it's just now setting into them that like, this is my profession. This is my career. It's not just something that I'm doing because I went through a phase where I thought it was cool, And it took until, maybe graduating with my master's for them to be like, okay, she's serious about this.
Yeah,
but the first few semesters of school, they were like, oh, she'll switch up. She'll change to something more practical. And then they realized that this is my something practical. And this is my passion. So I didn't want to pick a career that, they thought was good because it pays or because it seems like, respectable. I feel like being a therapist is quite respectable as well. And it's very necessary. So I think their thinking has started to shift a little bit, but it took a while.
Right. It's always something. I feel like as our first generation, we definitely do have to break the mold and, be that one that's just going to have to ruffle some feathers and make them see like, no, like the way you knew was survival. And it's a different mindset, it's a different time, it's a different way. And I mean, I guess at the end of the day, it's all from love and from what they know. But we know a little something too. You know what I mean? We've navigated these spaces, For me, I guess it's a little different because when my parents came, at least I know for my mom for sure, did not speak the language. Her accent is still sitting pretty and thick, you know what I mean? And I guess that barrier is something that I didn't have to overcome, but it also serves me because I can speak both languages. You know what I mean? Like till this day, my grandmother does not speak English. And so it's in a way for you to connect, but if you don't speak it, then it's just like hi and bye. You know what I mean? And that's an even way further removed generation. Like, ooh. Sometimes it's probably easier to deal with children than it is with my grandmother because their ways are their ways. And sometimes it's like, you're not still back home. You know what I mean? And how they expect children to conduct themselves, even as a full adult. Like, you need me. You need things from me. Like, no. It's always like kind of stay in a child's place. My spirit can't do it. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I just feel like we're conditioned to be with our family in one way. This is how I will be with my family in one way. And then this is how I'm going to be with everyone else another way. And I haven't found that way to merge it. Or I don't know if I ever will. I don't know if I can or ever will, I feel that I can't change the way this generation or at least let me speak for my family. I can't change the way they will think or how I expect them to adapt to how I view things sometimes. So, I will just kind of say things in a way for them culturally, very, very tay. But, I feel like I'm just separated and conditioned to separate both of my lives. I feel like I'm just living separate lives sometimes. And I think that's the best way I handle things too as well. But also, I kind of wanted to go into like has there been like an intellectual gap that you guys experienced as well too? When speaking with your family, like, or, when you did challenge their thoughts, were you quickly considered rude? Like, I don't know, like, for example, for me, when I graduated, or say if I said something to like one of my parents, it's like, okay, yes, we know you're the one with the degree. And it was just like where that came from? I was just expressing myself, but it was quick to be like, yes, we know you're the one with the degree, but I'm your mother, I'm your father, or it just goes completely left. So I was just wondering, have you guys even experienced these things as well? And how did you guys like deal with that too?
I get a lot of that from my family and from friends and just people who have known me, Nate as a person versus Nate the therapist. A lot of times it's like, all right, you don't have to give me that psychoeducational response. And I'm like, I'm just talking, or, oh, are you analyzing me? So sometimes I get, some backhanded comments where it's just like, oh, this is not therapy. You don't have to talk to me like that. And so I've noticed that has happened a lot. But then also I'm the first person that a lot of people come to with certain questions. So it's like, it's a little frustrating at times because it's like they know that I have knowledge in this area, but then I'll also kind of every now and then it's like somebody tries to, put me in my place, so to say. And it's just like, oh, don't think you know better than me because you do this. But then it's like if they have a question related to what I do, I'm the first person that they come to. So I've dealt with a little bit of that. And so I don't know. I think that's probably not going to stop for people that have known me for a long time, that hesitance to come to me with certain things, but then they also realize that, maybe I am qualified for those things. It's just that they've known two versions of me. They know me as, the person that grew up around them, or, the daughter, the niece, but then they also know me as a professional. So I feel like it's been a little hard for some people to merge those ideas in their head, that I can be all of these roles at the same time. And it's been a little hard for me to merge all of the roles as well at times.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Ooh, those are the kind of things that get under my skin, because I think it's not just like, it's like you're disrespecting me as a person, because regardless of if I'm wearing my professional hat or who I am, like you said, integrity is still there. At the core, it is still me. You know what I mean? So, like, don't try to come for me. Like, I'm like, it's kind of like they want to put you in your place and demean you and kind of remind you of who, whatever. No, then don't ask me. I'll say, then why are you asking me?
Right.
You know what I mean? And sometimes it almost feels like projection if someone's like, are you psychoanalyzing me? I mean, aren't we always like peeping other people and checking energies and, seeing what the vibe is? I can only respond to what you put out, but a lot of people don't want to see themselves. So I guess that becomes a whole different conversation. But yeah, you know what I do. If you're a mechanic and I have an issue with a car, I'm gonna go to you. If I don't like it, I'm not gonna be like, well, what do you know? No, that's your field. That's what you do. I might not like the price and what you're saying, but I'm not going to invalidate what you're saying because it doesn't fit what I'm trying to hear. And you coming for free information. People have to pay for this.
Boom.
Just saying. But I also feel like our culturally, our families and so forth, we were, I guess, in a sense, like emotionally deprived from them in a way, because they had so many hardships just coming to this country and trying to make ends meet in some ways. For some people, that I feel they don't know how to handle their own emotions or handle our emotions too as well. So I don't know if anyone experienced that too, or understand where I'm coming from, that sometimes they just emotionally cannot even verbalize what they want to say, how they want to say it, and even how to understand us, too. I feel like that plays a factor as well.
Yeah, I think the idea of emotional intelligence has, I think it's kind of a new concept to a lot of people. Whereas, everyone has, book smart. Some people are, they have common sense, not everyone, but, the idea of emotional intelligence is very new to a lot of people. So being empathetic to others, knowing how to read a room, knowing how to listen to understand versus listen to respond. That's something that a lot of people don't know. And I wasn't raised with that knowledge. It was something that I think because of being Americanized to an extent and because of what I studied in school, it's like I understand those things a little bit better now. But that's not something that was part of my upbringing. And it's not because, I'm not blaming my parents for not being that way. It's just that people do the best they can with the level of awareness they have, and they didn't have that awareness. So now that I have that awareness, I feel like I have to use that in my relationships, in my friendships, at work. And it has made the way that I relate to other people, not even just more efficient, but more fulfilling, because these are things that, I don't know, like, I don't think my parents were taught these things. And so they didn't know how to teach me these things. So I don't blame them, but it's like, because I have the awareness, now I'm choosing to do things differently.
I agree. To kind of like sort of relate, I feel like in our treatment, like, no, I never heard the words "I love you." I know I was loved and taken care of. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like, I have two siblings, so one's older, one's younger. And I feel like, for me and my brother, because we're closer in age, like we kind of get it. You know what I mean? But for my younger sister, I feel this generation, like they demand more, which I love for them. But I think it comes with a perspective, like, kind of like maybe there is to me a sense of entitlement with the younger generation, like the one below us. What do they call them? We're millennials, so
Gen
they're
Z.
like, yeah, that. That it's kind of like, they want all these experiences and they want all these things and demand all these things, and our parents just do not have the capacity for that. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's like it just does not compute. You know what I mean? Whether it's kind of like they want to be shown all this affection and they want all this love, and it's like you have to be there. Like I could have like, a participation trophy and you have to show up and you have to, make my childhood's like, feel like this amazing thing. And I think for our parents, it's kind of like, I provided for you. Like, I love you by all the things that, I've done for you, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to affection. For them, I think their love is duty, and our generation and younger, love is affection. And clearly our love languages are not meeting, and it just creates a rift and feeling like one is abandoned and one's feeling like this one is the resentment is there and you're ungrateful. What's your take on that?
Mine?
Yes.
Or oh, okay. Yeah, I would agree with you. I think love languages are definitely important, and they're not something that the generation before us really take into account. So for us, it may feel like, you know, our parents don't love us because they don't say it, but for them it's like their acts of service. It's like I pay the bills, I keep a roof over your head, I provide you food to eat. Why are you ungrateful? And for us, it's not ungrateful. It's just kind of like, I appreciate those things, but words of affirmation are also important. So I think a lot of times people in our generation, and it shows up in our romantic relationships too, or friendships, where we are seeking out the things that we lacked in our childhood in romantic partners. And that can be frustrating too, because I don't think people realize how much their childhoods affect their relationships later on in life as adults. So we come into things from a place of deficit or from a void where it's like, I know what I don't want, but do you know what you want? And do you know what your needs are? So I think it's very important to come into things with self-awareness. And I find that a lot of people that I see in therapy, they might have insight, but they don't really know what's good for them. They just know what doesn't feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
So, do you have any tips or ideas how anyone could overcome these kind of feelings of like guilt, feeling like they have to really over care for their parents after they get their degree? The basic struggles of being that first generation here. Do you have any tips for them? And then, of course, lastly, tell everyone where you're located, what you most likely focus on, and yeah, all about your services.
Yeah. I think something that has helped me and I've seen help other people is boundaries. I'm very, very big on setting, maintaining, enforcing boundaries. And boundaries are not just for work. They're not just for friendships. You have to set boundaries with your parents sometimes. And I think that one way that I've framed it that really helps me is that boundaries are not a way to keep people out of your life. They're a way to keep people in your life because you care about them and you have to set parameters for how you want things to go. So I'm setting a boundary because I want you in my life. If I'm setting a boundary that's too rigid and I want you out of my life, that's different. But when I set boundaries, I think of it as, how can I keep this person in my life in a healthy way? How can we have a reciprocal relationship? How can I make sure that we don't hurt each other? So setting boundaries with your parents, is big, and that is often seen as disrespect for for a lot of first generation folks. And that's something that I've had to deal with as an ongoing thing with my parents, where it's like, hey, I love you, but I'm not available to do X, Y, and Z for you all the time. Or, I can do you a favor, or I can help you with your hair, I can, clean whatever, but this is not something that's going to be ongoing. Or, I have a life of my own. And that's something that's very hard for parents to understand at times, especially if, they've grown up in a different way where you're forever indebted to your parents. No matter what they ask you, you drop everything and do it. But it's like, hey, you raised me to be self-sufficient. You've raised me to handle my stuff. And if I'm not able to help you with something, or I tell you that I can't do something, it's not out of disrespect. It's because I have boundaries. So boundaries are very important. Radical acceptance is very important. That's a principle that a lot of people don't understand. And it basically, I always say it's a cousin of it is what it is. But radical acceptance is like framing it in a more acceptable way. So if I'm radically accepting something, that would mean that I know that this is how something is. I've done my best in the situation, and there is not something that's going to change about it. So it is what it is usually is a very hands-off approach. Radical acceptance is I've accepted what the situation is. I know that I've done my best, and I'm going to move forward knowing that this situation is not changing. I am changing, and maybe the circumstances are not changing, but I'm changing for the better. So I think that's also helpful. And another thing is I think people just kind of need to know when to say no, which is a part of boundary setting, but knowing when to say no, knowing your limits, like you were mentioning, Ashley, before about how your body told you, like, you're not going to stay at work today. So doing things preemptively as opposed to like crisis intervention helps a lot. So it's like, I'm getting tired. Maybe I need to drop one of my obligations for the weekend. Maybe I need to sleep in a little bit longer. Maybe I need to just turn off the lights and lay in bed in the dark. Maybe I need to take a longer shower. Maybe I don't need to go to brunch today. So saying no to things when you know that you're overwhelmed, even if it means saying no to people that depend on you, sometimes you have to do that. Yeah, those are things that have helped me, and I definitely feel like they help a lot of people that I've worked with. And it's also important to remember that, for everyone in therapy, your therapist is also navigating their own life. So they're not the end all be all. They don't know everything about everything. And I've told my clients, like, you're the expert on your life. So you're also teaching me. I'm helping you navigate, but you are teaching me about your experience. So sometimes I might be wrong. If I'm off kilter with something I've said, or I don't understand what you're saying, let me know. Because I'm not an expert on anything. I've been trained to help you walk through your situation. But if there's something I don't know, then clarify that for me.
I wonder, do you feel like you get burdened because, it can be a lot. So do people misunderstand what your role is in their life? Like, do they think you're Iyanla and you're just supposed to fix everything? Or you know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. Oftentimes around like the second and third session, I've had clients who feel either overwhelmed or they feel like, all right, therapy's not moving fast enough for me. And it's like, well, I don't have, the solutions. I help you find the solutions. So a lot of people come into therapy having this idea of like what therapy is on TV, where, somebody has a notebook, they say, yeah, how does that make you feel? And then they send you home and you have a prescription, and then you see this person every week and you vent, and that's it. That's not what therapy is. And it's definitely not like that for me. I try to make my therapeutic relationships feel like an exchange. So it's like, I am learning about your life, and I am learning about your life in order to help you navigate your life. So there's things that I don't know. There's things that you're still going to have to figure out. I'm not going to make your decisions for you, but I will walk you through what I think might be best. So I'm learning about you. You're learning through what I'm teaching you. And this is a partnership. This is not I come in, I clean house, you have the perfect environment now, you can succeed, and therapy's done, and therapy worked for me because this person solved all my problems. That's not therapy at all.
100%. 100%. Thank you for putting that little disclaimer.
Yeah, it's a process. And sometimes people get impatient, and I've been there myself because I think every good therapist should be in therapy or at least have experienced it. And when I started therapy years ago, I remember I came into it like, all right, what are we doing? Come on, give me a plan. And my therapist was just like asking me questions about stuff that I thought was minuscule. And I'm like, why are we talking about this? Aren't we trying to fix my life? And then after a while, I noticed like, okay, there is a reason why she's asking me these questions. You know, how do you handle deadlines? How have you expressed anger in the past? Do you cry? Like questions that I thought were so random, but essentially, you know, they made a lot of sense in the long run because I'm like, okay, she's trying to understand the way that I cope with emotions and the way that I operate. So sometimes those sessions that feel a little random or, you know, you feel like you're not really achieving things, there's reasons, you know, why therapists ask you questions that seem random. They're really not random. We're learning about you and we're learning about how you operate and we're learning about how best we can help you.
It's so funny you said that because like 6 years ago when I first had my therapist, I legit the first few sessions was like, why am I with this woman? She is not getting because I was like, she is not she's not hearing me. I told her this is what I'm going through in my life right now. Help me. And she's there asking me about work and asking me about my dad and asking me about my mom. I didn't talk about my family in here. Why are we talking about my family? But I think it was like a good few sessions in. She's like, oh, we have other areas that we need to start really working on. And I'm like, looking at her like,
this is not what I came here
for. I'm okay. She was talking about. But as time progressed, I was like, oh, wow, I understand these first few intakes with her. Now I grasp it. So for anyone who's out there too, like, sit down and stay for the first few sessions. Don't just run because you're like, they're not really listening to me. You know, right. They're really trying to get to know you too as well. So I'm happy you mentioned that. But where can people find you? Let us know.
So I am on Psychology Today. I also have a therapy for Black Girls Profile, but I right now I am doing sessions at Therapy Brooklyn. It's a private practice that operates in Greenpoint, but I only do telehealth. I don't have any openings right now, but I might be doing some other things in the future. You could follow me on Instagram at Nehayoola, Nehayoola. I try to post things about mental health. I'm also into writing for mental health, so I've taught and I teach workshops for this mentorship program called Girls Right Now. And yeah, I wear a few different hats, but right now I would say that most of my time goes into me working at this treatment center. One of the things that I'm qualified to do is substance abuse counseling, and I got into that a few years before I got into general therapy. So yeah, there's a few things that I do, maybe more than a few, feeling a little overwhelmed at times, but I'm also in therapy. So if it makes anybody feel better to know that like their therapist is in therapy, we have a place where we let ourselves go and dump our stuff too. And I think that that's very healthy. But yeah, for now you can follow me on Instagram. And yeah, I hope that whoever is out there questioning if therapy is for them, I hope that this kind of not reminds you, but just reassures you that therapy is for everyone. I'm a big believer in it. You don't have to go in with a huge problem for it to be for you. And oftentimes people come into it thinking they have nothing wrong. They just want to see what it's about. Your therapist will find something to talk about with you. There's always something. So if you're curious about it, and you want to do a first session, I know that my practice offers free first sessions for anybody who's never tried therapy before and they're interested in it. And you can visit us at therapybrooklyn.com if that's something that interests you. But yeah, definitely big on therapy, definitely big on healing. And most of the work of therapy happens outside of that 45 minutes. So if you get homework or if you're told to try something different that week, take that seriously, because most of the work of therapy is not in that session. And we're not there for every single thing that happens in your life. You have to update us. So it's really important to kind of view life from a growth mindset. And that's how I try to encourage all of my clients to do, is like, don't just limit, what we're doing here to what we're doing here. Try to carry it out.
I love that.
Right?
I love that. So I hope everyone enjoyed this episode. Let us know if you guys are dealing with similar situations, or if anyone is open to therapy or in therapy, how that's going, if you're looking for a therapist in New York, in Brooklyn. So don't forget to comment, like, subscribe. All right, everyone. Till next time. Bye.